जो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह पजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह गुर सेवा ते भगत कमाई तब ये मानस देही पाए इस देही को सिमरै देव सो देही भज हर की सेव सो देही भज हर की सेव भजो गोबिंद पूल मात जाह मानस जन्म का एही लाह.
Greetings everyone and welcome to our lovely spring day, although a little cool, to this spiritual question and answer session on the practical aspects of following the spiritual path rather than just conceptual. So let me begin as always with a little introduction, as this is sent out globally on the internet. So in order for everybody to understand what we're doing here, I have to read a short introduction. So welcome friends to another podcast in the Holy Truth series, given as always in the name of the Supreme Lord, who once again wishes to impart the very highest truth of what many call God, life and creation to the sincere seekers of the world, especially for the modern age, that's further supported by the holy masters, perfect saints and noble mystics of Sant today. Now this high truth of the ages is the noble path of Sant, or path of the true saints, also known as the universal truth, true spirituality or true religion, that is so graciously gifted to seeking humanity by the great holy masters, perfect saints and noble mystics in every age, who are themselves the true representatives of the Supreme Lord even today. And although little known among the masses, once encountered, a sincere truth seeker can easily recognize that this noble path or true way encompasses all true faiths and beliefs as the noble source of all, details of which can be found in our humble literature, spiritual centers or YouTube channel, as well as in the Holy Discourse series of ISTAuk.com, among other Sant sources from around the world. But before I begin today's session of spiritual questions and answers, I would first like to make a short introduction about who we are and what we represent here today, especially for those who don't already know. While for those who do, then please forgive my repetition. I hope to be brief. We are the International Spiritual Truth Association, or ISTA for short, and although now global, we originally set up in 2016 in the UK by request of the Holy Masters of the day, who derived their authority from Great Master Baba Savan Singh Ji of the holy lineage of Sant in India, the Levant and Persia. As such, we are a spiritual education center commissioned to provide the very highest truth of Sant to those who wish to know. Thus, we simply build upon the work of the more traditional methods currently available elsewhere. In this way, our given mission is simple: to tell the full truth about true spirituality or true religion from the Supreme Lord's point of view, especially now, in the modern age, while also correcting the confusions of the past and even that of the present about what is the real truth. But this high teaching is not new. It is the age-old path of true spirituality, known today as the holy truth of Sant, which in fact has been discreetly taught throughout the ages to the most sincere seekers of the time, alongside the more familiar religious or philosophical teachings that we all know of. Indeed, Holy Masters tell us that the simple teachings of mass religion and mass philosophy, or even mass science, are only there to elevate the masses to the position of higher truth seeking, so that they can understand and ultimately practice true spirituality or true religion, with all the love, grace and wonder that such a gift entails. Now for those who do listen and take heed, Holy Masters tell us that they are indeed the most fortunate ones in humanity. As for myself, I am a humble servant and sincere devotee of the very highest truth of Sant for many years now, who has given his life in the service of the true Lord, as well as to the Holy Masters of today. As such, I do not seek any recognition, praise or reward, as I only act with the authority and by request of the Supreme Lord itself, as well as that of the Holy Masters of today, to simply tell the full truth of God, life and creation to those who wish to know. I thus live in the Supreme Lord's will, and simply offer my humble demonstration, guidance and true knowledge to all who seek the same, especially in the modern age. Now, as a friend and co-traveller in this noble path to God realization, I only ask that you put aside my human form, and instead listen to and take heed of the loving truth that the Supreme Lord has to offer you via this humble form, who has himself been transformed by the Holy Masters of today. Thus I represent the proof that truly anyone can rise above their given karmic role to become truly noble once again by the true Lord's grace, if only they earnestly seek it, no matter how wretched or difficult their life may have been. For the true Lord of all is not only compassionate for the suffering humanity who seeks the truth, but also truly merciful. Therefore, everything I shall share with you today is a gift of wisdom from the true Lord itself for the sincere seekers of high spiritual truth, which I have been asked to share with you. But please do not attempt to praise or glorify this humble servant in any way, for you too are all divine beings undergoing a human experience in this lifetime, though you may not yet be aware of this. Therefore, what is given to me freely by the true Lord, I give to you the same. In return, I only ask that you open your heart and mind to the holy truth that the Supreme Lord and the Holy Masters have to offer you. There is no need to give up your current faith or belief, only to listen, explore, and see for yourself the further truths that are hidden within you. For true spirituality is not a religion or a scripture. It is the birthright of every human being here on earth, no matter what their current background, belief, or circumstance. Now, for those who need further assistance, they may privately contact the main speaker directly via email or video, by first subscribing to our valuable information service at ISTAuk.com, and then requesting the direct contact details of our main speaker from our administrators. He will endeavour to answer all spiritual queries within 48 hours of receipt, but please be patient if he should take a little longer due to his busy schedule and sheer number of inquiries. So thank you. Now, before I start the question and answer session for today, I would like to give a short talk about recognizing the various stages of spiritual attainment before starting this session. This relates to many emails I have received from various practitioners around the world requesting to know how do they recognize where they are at and what they should do for each stage of their spiritual attainment. So this short talk relates to the various stages of spiritual progress for serious practitioners, barring the mere curiosities of the insincere masses, of course. So let's begin. Now there are 3 phases of high truth seeking that each require a specific set of activities or practices in order to fulfill their natural needs. These phases are known thus: the basic phase of high truth inquiry, the intermediate phase of high truth seeking, and the advanced phase of spiritual awakening. Now let's elaborate further in summary. The basic phase, which is divided into 4 parts, marks the true starting point for any sincere high truth seeker, beyond the spectacle of cultural religions, popular science, or trendy philosophy, or even that of spiritual cult practices or trends that are all very prevalent in the current age, but none of which creates or answers high truth seekers. Now the following divisions of the basic phase of high truth seeking is this. Level 1 is a growing and sincere desire to know the higher truth of all existence. Such a one becomes dissatisfied with their material existence, and thus feels restless or unhappy with their lot in life, whether rich or poor, celebrity or a nobody, healthy or diseased, or other significant aspect of life. For they all seek the high truth, no matter what their background. For these fortunate ones, the holy remedy is this: read the holy books or texts of established true religions or spiritual paths with an unbiased mind. Watch videos about the concept of true spirituality and mysticism. Listen to holy teachings and associate oneself with spiritual people who resonate with you, but avoid any cults, worldly philosophies, or scientific babble that would merely distract you at best or seriously harm you at worst. Now, level 2 of the basic phase. Having firmly established oneself as a sincere truth seeker, and having familiarized oneself with the concept of true spirituality versus lesser aware belief systems, there is room now for a genuine belief in spiritual God, the primal being or supreme consciousness, as the single origin of all existence. Such a one understands that all existence originates from a higher source than the material world, and that they are the children of that higher source. For them, the holy remedy is this: attend holy satsangs or spiritual meetings, regularly meet and speak with true spiritual practitioners, continually observe the wonderment of life and existence, so as to boldly realize that there lays within existence a true mystery that's not answered by science or trendy philosophers, and is beyond the comprehension of mere scientific study or logical reasoning. Level 3 of the basic phase is an understanding of the reality that each human being is actually a soul being or spiritual being, clothed in the character of a human form, and that existence itself at the human level is mere illusion or simple time passing to reach our true purpose. Therefore, nothing here is permanent or everlasting. Nothing here is worth our true devotion or earnest pursuit. Now, for such a sincere one, the holy remedy is this: introspection on one's higher truth and origin through deep inner contemplation via holy meditation, which is the silent withdrawal of consciousness to the named 3-eye point. while asking searching questions in one's mind, such as, who am I really? What will happen to me at the time of my death? And what is the true purpose of my human life? At the same time, one should seek and enjoy the loving company of a living holy master, perfect saint, or noble mystic, and live by the rule of do no harm. Level 4 of the basic phase is a firm belief in the existence of holy masters, perfect saints, or noble mystics, who have selflessly visited us throughout the ages as the true representatives of the Supreme Lord or Supreme Consciousness, which is itself the true origin of all existence. For those in this category, as advanced truth seekers, the holy remedy is this: regularly attend holy satsangs by the enlightened ones, speak to the sincere spiritual practitioners regularly, and research about the existence of true spiritual masters, both historically and today, from any background, till fully satisfied of their existence in this world for the salvation of the sincere. Now next we have the intermediate phase of high truth seeking, beyond the mere dissatisfaction with worldly existence, or the mass beliefs of cultural religion, trendy philosophers, or popular science. So let's elaborate further. So now we're looking at the intermediate phase of spiritual attainment, which is again divided into 3 parts this time, and marks the significant change from being a mere cultural or mass belief follower to a more personal connection with the true Lord or Holy Master of the day as the primary objective. Let's now elaborate upon the 3 levels of this second phase of true spiritual seeking, continuing on from level 4 of the basic phase. So they are continued on, they're not starting again. So level 5 of the second phase or intermediate phase, or the first level of this phase in high truth seeking and practice, is the understanding that we are all equal co-travelers through existence in spiritual terms, as we are all children of the one same Lord or Supreme Consciousness, and that therefore we are all brothers and sisters of humanity who work together for the common good of humanity, or should work together. Therefore, the principles of do no harm, non-judgment or blame, and unselfish or kind living should be our ethos. The holy remedy for this noble living is this: to pray to the Lord our Holy Master for help and support, to recognize this kinship fact, and to meditate earnestly morning and evening on God's holy mantra if given, or on Satnam if not, and to seek the company of a holy master and their enlightened disciples as much as possible for holy initiation or spiritual awakening. Now level 6 of the intermediate phase is the growing awareness that all sentient beings, whether plants, insects or animals, are living spiritual beings undergoing their own life journey, and so must be respected and protected from unnecessary harm. At the same time, one must protect oneself from actual harm too, through the avoidance of harmful activities or unhealthy diet, bad environment, etc. The holy remedy to achieve this is this: do not seek to harm any living creature in any manner, and to read the holy scriptures of the holy masters, perfect saints or noble mystics past and present, and to watch videos about animal cruelty, environmental pollution and noble living, while at the same time seeking the company of vegans and like-minded holy disciples as one's primary community, shedding all else. Now level 7 of the intermediate phase is the recognition that all human beings are ultimately unhappy in this world, and that suffering, disease, aging, and death are inescapable truths for all. Whether rich or poor, king or peasant, educated or uneducated, etc., all must perish in the end, and that all material desire leads to nothing in the end. Everything you have achieved or built cannot be taken with you after death. Thus, one should declutter one's life, both materially and emotionally, from unnecessary possessions and negative people. Again, the holy remedy to help with this change in mindset is this: read the holy scriptures of the Buddha and Christ, for example, who specifically go into detail about this aspect of living, in addition to the books of Sant, and regularly, even daily, seek the company of the Holy Master or his disciples, while observing the truth of the reality of life and suffering, by recognizing disease, aging, and death as a reminder and inevitability, but without negativity. Then finally, we have the advanced phase of high truth seeking, far beyond the rituals of mass beliefs or that of the lesser spiritual paths, where union with the highest truth alone, through love and devotion, is one's true goal now, no matter what the cost. Now let's elaborate further on this. So the advanced stage is divided into 3 parts, and marks a true connection with the Holy Master of the day, and a sincere yearning for the higher truth and its awareness. Let's now elaborate upon the 3 levels of this advanced phase of true spiritual seeking. Level 8, which is the first phase, or first level of the advanced stage, but continuing on from the previous, is the fundamental understanding and acceptance that karma, the law of cause and effect, is the universal law of lower creation, mentioned in most of the holy scriptures, and by the holy masters themselves, past and present, that determines the fate of all life in karmic creation, which none can escape. This law entirely governs the script of lower creation for each and every sentient being, high or low, and thus creates the life we live now based upon our past thoughts and deeds. It also creates the future for us. Therefore, we must be very careful what we think, speak, or do in this life, as the consequences will have to be borne by us in the future, near or far. Also, as a result of our habits and tendencies in this life or the past, we may exist in any form, from the level of microbes up to the level of a human being, or from the level of a hell being up to the level of a demigod, through successive reincarnations based upon the karmic law of birth and death and consequence, that's determined by our behavior in each life and the direction of our desires or attachments. Now the holy remedy to deal with this fact is this: if not already obtained, then seek holy initiation, spiritual awakening from a living holy master, perfect saint, or noble mystic, and then practice holy meditation for at least 2.5 hours daily, while following the do no intentional harm principle of pious living. At the same time, keep the regular company of the enlightened, the saints, or the pious ones, and keep the reminder of the holy principles of right living forever in your mind, and in such a way that it becomes natural, like breathing. This is a very serious business for one at this stage of spiritual development. Further to this is the systematic decluttering of one's life from unnecessary possessions, activities, and people, so as to become a bit of a happy recluse or hermit. Now level 9 of the advanced phase is the inner understanding that all creation below the level of the highest kingdom of God or Satgurus is merely a temporary illusion that exists solely for our spiritual adventure in creation and for our Lord's own glorification. Therefore, nothing here is actually real, and thus nothing here is worth clinging on to, except for the true Lord or Holy Master who represents the only truth in all this illusion. The holy remedy to facilitate that awareness at this stage is this: 24/7 holy contemplation upon one's salvation master and one's own inner higher truth, with deep and prolonged meditation for at least 4.5 hours per day initially, to access the higher realms of spiritual truth and existence, cultivating a continuous desire to know the holy truth above all else, thus becoming a personal renunciate and serving humanity and the Supreme Lord, the Holy Master, in all one's spare time and endeavours, even during moments of worldly enjoyments in the Lord's name. Now, level 10, the final level of the advanced phase, is the actual glimpse or awareness of the holy truth directly and of our true reality termed self-realization, followed by the ultimate realization of our true Lord or Supreme Consciousness as our origin. The holy remedy to support this achievement is this: first, sincerely and earnestly request the special grace of a perfect living Holy Master above all other personal needs or concerns, by wanting only God or the holy truth in this life and nothing else, thus being awakened into pure divine consciousness and bliss. As you can see, the progress of a spiritual practitioner, true spiritual practitioner, is a serious business for those who engage in this activity, and there are clear phases of progress that one can measure themselves against. So you can now determine at which stage of spiritual progress you are currently at, and the remarkable journey that lies ahead for you. So I wish you all the very best in this endeavour, and will also lend my support to all who seek it while I am living in the physical form. So now let's go back to the question and answers for now from the wider Sangha.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, the theme again is living the spiritual way of life. I've got a couple of questions around merit to start off with. How is merit accumulated through meditation or contemplation, and how much is needed to transform into blessings or grace?
This is a mathematical person who wants a quantity. It doesn't quite work like that. Actually, what do we mean by merit? Merit is not only accumulated through a specific ritual like meditation or contemplation, but actually throughout the day, by every heartbeat and breath that we ascribe to the thought of the Lord, the Holy Master, or seeking the truth, counts as merit. However, the focused form or concentrated form, such as meditation or holy contemplation, obviously has much more power behind it, because it generates one more deeply into that frame of thinking. But actually, merit is counted per heartbeat and per breath in spiritual terms from a Holy Master. Because at the time of death, then when you're asked, what have you done with your life to show me? The measure by which spiritual merits will be turned into grace will be heartbeats and breaths, not the individual activities of what you were doing, but rather were they spent in true seeking and devotion, bhakti, or not, or selfishness, or other distraction. That is it. So merit is accumulated day by day as we progress in the spiritual path, and often we don't realize that we've accumulated merit until some miracle or coincidence happens in our life. maybe we just ask Master, please help with this parking space or something, and suddenly it appears, and it's consistently so. And then we think, oh, that's quite remarkable. That never used to happen to me before. I was always the last one to find a space. They start noticing coincidences in their life. And this is all because of merit. So it's very subtle. It's not obvious at first. As one makes progress on the spiritual path, it becomes more obvious and more remarkable, these coincidences. Almost incredible that you cannot believe that such a thing is possible. How much is needed to transform into blessing or grace? One moment of merit, one moment of devotion is all that's needed. But of course, it's based upon the accumulation. Now, what do we mean by this? The most valuable thing we have as human beings on this earth, as I've always mentioned, is time. It is the only thing we cannot get back. We can get a new wife, a new job, even more children, or a new pet, or new possessions, but we cannot reclaim time. And the Lord knows this. So every moment spent in true devotion for the Lord, or true seeking of the Lord, is counted in our favour as merit. And that's how the Lord looks at merit. We divide it up into particular activities. From the Lord's point of view, is simply how much time you spent in terms of heartbeats and breaths in contemplating upon the higher truth of your own existence. Even in the early days when you're just questioning life and wanting to know if there is more, that still is merit. So merit is there all the time. Almost everybody at some point is earning some kind of merit. But for spiritual practitioners, it becomes much more obvious and directed and sincere because they spend so much more focused time on searching for the higher truth.
Thank you. I'm unsure if what I'm doing qualifies as contemplating on God, but my mind is always engaged in conversation with Him. Does this generate merit or blessings?
Of course, as explained before, any thought of the Lord, the Holy Master, the representative of the truth, counts as merit. And the degree of merit is determined by the enthusiasm or earnestness of our dedication to that practice, which is why spiritual practitioners tend to benefit more than non-spiritual practitioners, because they tend to be more sincere. Remember, since time is the universal factor here, right, every breath spent in spiritual contemplation counts. But for a serious spiritual practitioner who is very focused and determined, their weight is more.
Thank you. Right, going on to self-discovery and inner growth. How can I deepen my understanding of my ego and transcend it without suppressing it?
Why would you want to understand the ego? Really, you want to dispel it. Understanding the soul is a far better activity from a spiritual perspective. Understanding you're a soul being, covered by the character that you're playing in this life. And this character is governed by something we call the ego. And this character is the one that's causing all the troubles for us. It's an imposter that we have assumed in this life to play the game of life. There's no reality to our character or to anything we're doing with it. It's all part and parcel of the script, of the play. Therefore, why should we bother trying to investigate it further? Why not transcend it? Why not overcome it? Yes.
This is just a guess. I'm just thinking about the question. Maybe they've got a big ego and they recognise it, but they don't really want that. And I don't know. It's just a thought. What should they do?
Some people are more in tune with their ego. We call them big ego because they have a very great self-identity and they're fascinated and obsessed with their identity in this world. So such individuals, we say, they have a big ego, and they demonstrate this through certain acts and speech. But it doesn't make any difference. The ego is actually the same for everyone. The ego is the character of the individual, whether you worship it or not. And this character plays all kinds of games for its own entertainment. And this character does not care about the soul. You cannot appeal to the ego for the sake of the soul. It doesn't care. It doesn't even have direct knowledge of the soul. It believes that it's self-powered and self-existent. It doesn't understand that the soul is the powerhouse, the battery, the electricity that runs it. It doesn't understand these things. It's just concepts. So from the ego point of view, it is happy to go about its script. The character that has been created since time began for that individual, it's following a script happily and playing the game. Even if that game results in hell, the ego itself doesn't care. The character is playing its parts very beautifully, like an actor on the stage. The ego comes, surrounds the soul and plays the part, and it plays the part exactingly. Yes?
Yeah, but are we using the same character you say is not interested in the soul to head back to the soul?
Yes. In a sense, you see, the character that we're playing has different levels, 3 levels of mind. Lower, middle, and higher. Now, higher mind wants to go back to its own source, spiritual mind. So what we're doing through these talks and discourses and everything is actually appealing to the higher mind and not to the soul. The soul doesn't need any education. The soul already knows. The soul is the powerhouse. It doesn't need to be taught anything.
So
it's connected with divinity.
So we're appealing to the character.
We're appealing to the higher character, yes. It's the game, part of the game. So part of the game of going back home is transcending the 3 levels of character and then eventually abandoning the character altogether. So first we have the emotional mind, which is the one that a lot of people operate by, the instinct mind, which we see in a lot of animals, for example. They operate by instinct and reaction. It's not logical, it's not clear, it's just an outburst. And a lot of people, even human animals, operate like this. And that means people who live by this alone, very emotional, they are nearer the animal state of existence in the human beings. Then we have the intellectual ones. So that's middle mind. They shun emotions as signs of lack of control or weakness even. And so they prefer to resolve matters through intellectual debate, discussion, and so on. They have a completely different approach to existence in the sense that they champion intellectual knowledge, theory, and philosophy over everything else, but they are still within their character. And then we have spiritual mind or higher mind. Now that's the intuitive mind that lets us feel that there's something more to this life and to this world than we understand. And therefore we must try to find it out. So once spiritual mind is awakened through, say, talks and discourses, and the time is up in their timeline of events, that their time has come to be receptive to such things, then they all champion spiritual knowledge above intellectual knowledge and emotional living. You see? So all these things are there in the character. And it is these stages have to be appealed to by different means in the character. Just like we have ladders, steps of the ladder. To get to the top, we have to start at the bottom rungs. We have to walk along them. We can't skip them. So in the same way, spirituality is much the same. It's an elevation of consciousness from a lower state to a higher state. And then the entire ego is abandoned. So after all of that effort, it's abandoned. That's why we call it the Leela, or the sport of the divine.
You're saying there's different levels of the mind.
Yeah.
What level of mind is bringing us here or to satsang?
What do you think out of the 3 I mentioned?
The topmost.
Hopefully, but some is intellectual. Some are more intellectually curious. They want to know what's it all about. Which is fine, because they're looking at it from an intellectual point of view, analytical point of view. So they analyze everything. The others just feel the love and the pull and that intuitive awareness in the atmosphere. And they have very little to say about that. They just enjoy the atmosphere. So there's different levels. Maybe even some are emotional, but very few, because there's nothing here to appeal to the lower base instincts or emotions. But those might be just the curiosity ones who come.
Ultimately, it's the same mind, isn't it?
It's the same mind, but it's divided into 3 parts. Yeah? Just like spirituality is divided into stages of progress. It's not just on and off like a light switch. Okay? So, yes, I hope that's answered that question. So the idea we can't suppress the ego, we overcome it. That's the idea. I think they mentioned about suppressing the ego and trying to do that. You can't. If you try to suppress the ego, it'll become deranged. It'll fight back with everything it has and turn you into an insanity person, insane. So best thing is to distract the ego with various means by giving it harmless activities to follow, whilst the higher elements of yourself, let's say, pursue higher truth thinking and activities. So because each of these minds require different satisfaction, you have to satisfy them all. So for example, the emotional mind, one of the biggest things that we see and big problems in modern society is food. So food is very much connected with that emotional mind, and people who are comfort eaters, for example, they live in the emotional frame of mind. They don't see the logic behind what they're doing. They don't see the reason of the nutrient content. They don't care if they're going to get fat or whatever, or ill. They eat it out of comfort. Well, these are just like animals. Animals do the same. They eat whatever they can find without thought of its nutrition, right? So human beings, human animals live in this way. They love their food. Similarly, base activities like, say, socializing, dancing, and other useless or trivial activities that provide no structure to one's life and do not advance them in any way, intellectually or spiritually, similarly are a release of emotions, and such individuals are living in that frame of reference. So we can see clearly different aspects of humanity and where somebody's at depending upon their preference. And some people have a mixture of two. There's in between. It's not on or switch. You can have a bit of emotional and then a bit of intellectual. So for example, they might go out partying and enjoying themselves, then come back home and say, what was all that about? Was it worth it? Many people have been there already. Yeah. Now that's because the intellectual mind's kicking in and they're thinking, well, so what? You know? And then let's say a higher thinking person, of course, wouldn't want to go to such a function anyway. But when they're analysing something in the world, like they're analysing, they say, why are we bothering to analyse all these things, like look into scientific investigations or other analysis? What's the point of it all? It's all illusion anyway. You see? So each stage of development gives a different type of thinking. Yeah.
Just tapping on to what you said about going out, but what about when you go out because it's just easier, even though you don't want to? So when you come home, you just come
we talk about somebody who's immersed in that activity. And let's say you have a function. You're a spiritual practitioner, you have to attend a function. You have no choice because it's rude to not do so. So you attend. But you are always repeating the names of the Lord. You're always looking at the whole wonderment of it all as a show of the Lord, a spectacle laid out for you to enjoy. So everything is attributed to the Lord in your heart, and you're just enjoying the wonder of it.
Okay, thank you. What methods can I adopt to awaken my spiritual intuition or inner guidance?
Really, exposure to spiritual truth. The more exposure you have to spiritual truth in whatever way you can, depending upon your karmas, is the way to empower the higher mind to awaken. And once the higher mind has been awakened, then it drives you. It drives you to seek things. You don't need to persuade it. It will take you here and there. It'll lead the way. Yeah? In the beginning, you're trying to force it a little bit. You're trying to encourage with intellectual reasoning. So using intellectual reasoning, well, if I go there, I might pick up some spiritual merit, or I might pick something up that I can use. That's the intellect. The helplessness to want to go somewhere because it's appealing to you for no particular rhyme or reason, that's higher mind. So some people are pulled by that higher mind love and devotion, others are pulled by intellectual, and very few by the emotional, usually because they have some trouble in their life and they want some some remedy from the master or the enlightened ones, you see. So then they're just interested in their particular reason. They're not interested in higher truth.
Thank you. How can I balance pursuing spiritual growth with accepting my current position in life on this journey?
It is about a balance in the beginning. In the beginning, we can't just give up everything and become a renunciate and go into the hills.
Why?
Even the holy masters say don't do that, because the entire society will crumble.
Yeah.
You see, our physical body has needs, and it requires a society and a community to function. if we don't fulfill those obligations in society, then the society will crumble, and therefore our lot will crumble too. We won't live very long if we are totally on our own, just as a renunciate somewhere in the foothills. Who's going to produce the food? Who's going to provide the water? Who's going to provide the basic clothes or protection, shelter? So this is not practical. The saints or the truly enlightened ones always talk about the practicality of living the spiritual path. So they say, live a balanced life. And what that means is that whilst you're doing your daily chores and duties and activities, which we call dharma, so once you're doing your dharma, at the same time, contemplate upon higher truths. And as you contemplate upon higher truths, what we spoke about earlier, which is grace or merit, is earned, which results in grace. Then suddenly you'll come into contact with somebody of higher learning, higher knowledge, and you will be able to talk with them to satisfy your higher needs, and so on. So it happens naturally. You know, when we begin a certain journey, things happen naturally. And spirituality is much the same as that. A series of coincidences, which are merits, turning into grace, leads us on our spiritual journey from the very beginning to the very end.
Okay, this is the last question regarding self-discovery and inner growth. What is the significance of silence in connecting with my inner self?
Well, very much important. Since speaking is an external activity, a projected out of your activity, and is directed to somebody external to you, how could you ever have inner realization through speaking or noise? Anything that's directed outwards, such as chanting or speaking, directing the attention outwards means that it cannot be withdrawn. You cannot go forward and backwards at the same time. Okay? You have to choose. So silence is a means by which you stop making the noise of external activities, and that allows you to progress within. So holy meditation in Sant Mat, or the high spiritual path, is a withdrawal of consciousness from the external world to within yourself, to the third eye point. And this is always done in silence. It cannot be done any other way.
Thank you. Okay, a couple of questions around spiritual practices. Are there particular techniques to calm the mind when it feels especially restless? Monkey mind.
Yes, there are. Of course, the Holy Masters recognize this, and they have given us various methods, means. For example, most spiritual paths have a structure and an organization to them, in which you attend satsangs, read holy books, watch videos, listen to talks, chant mantras, meditation. There are many ways which are employed by the individual to help keep the focus back into the spiritual realm. So, to focus inwardly is the ultimate objective. To focus on your truth. So any means which you find suitable, even something worldly, if it drives you to that inner inquiry, then that is good for your spiritual practice, and it calms restlessness. So restlessness comes because of dissatisfaction. Yeah.
So is it like trial and error? Some things might work, some
Yes,
things won't.
in the beginning you have to find what works for you best. Some people could just merely read a passage from a certain book and they're done. They're immediately calmed. Others need to listen to long talks and lectures. Others need to be surrounded by spiritual people constantly telling them so. People have different levels of need. And once you identify that need, then you should pursue it.
Sure. What role does gratitude have in enriching my spiritual practice?
Immensely so. In the beginning, it is hardly recognized. As one progresses on the path and they realize who is the real doer and that everything is grace, not effort, the gratitude massively increases. Gratitude is the single most important factor in spiritual progress because it is a recognized appreciation of the truth and the truth giver. and of our own origin, which is the Lord itself. The Lord created this creation to be appreciated, to be recognized. Any recognition of this by its lesser forms is something that is greatly rewarded in spirituality. And everything that we're doing is to bring about that appreciation and recognition of that higher truth through gratitude. So they are very, very closely linked and very significantly important. Yes.
Thank you. How can I identify and release the attachments that hold me back?
It's not a question of forcing yourself to detach. It's a question of finding something better. The Holy Masters tell us that attachment creates detachment. What do they mean by that? Attaching yourself to something greater, to a higher truth, automatically detaches you from something lesser and lower. We do that all the time. We do that with children. We distract them by giving them something better to distract them from playing with that particular toy. So this method of distraction by giving something better, in this case attachments, if you attach yourself to something far greater that satisfies you more, wouldn't you normally automatically give up the lesser attachments? So the only way to do so is not by force, because you'll rebel or you won't keep it up for long, is to find something better, latch onto that, and automatically you'll give it up. For example, I often tell the story of a young boy, 10-year-old boy. He's given a toy car for his birthday present, and he's very attached to the car. He's playing with it all day long, and when his parents try to retrieve the car for his bedtime, he protests most vigorously, but eventually they succeed through distracting him with something else. But as he gets older, on his 18th birthday, they give him the keys to an actual car. Now, the toy in his hand, he looks at the toy in his hand, the toy car, and he looks at the real one there. He automatically discards the toy and runs to the real thing. That is how it works.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions around connection with the divine. And you've touched on this first question already. How can I recognize divine guidance or coincidences in my life?
Because anything that's out of the ordinary and connected with something we have recently thought or done is usually a simple indicator. It's not always the case though, because sometimes things happen much later. You might feel that you need something or something's in your interest, but the opportunity is not there straight away. But weeks later it comes about and you think, oh, how did that come about? Because the opportunity is where to do it. So it's not immediately recognizable, but it can be. We often don't realize that our entire spiritual progress is nothing more than a series of coincidences, encounters and understandings that come our way and lead us to higher knowledge and higher awareness. And when we look back from a higher perspective, we see that our entire spiritual journey was orchestrated from the very beginning, that actually the character in the play had very little to do with it. The script of the character said that it will go here, do this and do that, and so the character is happy playing its part. It doesn't understand the greater picture, the greater drive behind that story in the rescue plan that is being commissioned at the beginning of time. So it's a wonderful thing to witness as we get more spiritual practice and progress.
Thank you. Right, next question. What signs indicate that I am living in alignment with the Lord's will?
It's very difficult to know in the beginning, because the easy answer would be that everything flows smoothly in your life without effort. In other words, you have effortless living. Effortless living is rare in this world. It does happen by those who completely surrendered. That's when you know for sure, because when you're completely surrendered and everything's still taken care of, you know for sure you haven't had any input. So you think, well, that's definitely the Lord's grace. But there are very few in that position.
Yeah.
But they do exist. So otherwise, it's always controversial whether you have caused an effect to happen or whether it has happened regardless. It's very difficult to know. The only thing you can do is do your very best to make the effort to live in the Lord's will by following the guidelines. We can send you the guidelines for anybody who wants to know. They're printed in things that count as living the Lord's will, because again that's another whole topic, and it's a whole satsang talked about how to live in the Lord's will. It's a very detailed activity. But for now, it's just trying to not instigate anything. It's just going with the flow. So there's a very good Western phrase. They say, go with the flow. Going with the flow is living the Lord's will in a way. And but if you can recognize the grace behind the going with the flow, how things are done automatically as they come your way, then that is even further merit for you and further blessings. So there's different degrees of living in this spiritual Lord's will, but it's very difficult to know in the beginning.
I think you've kind of answered the next question. How can I more fully surrender to the Supreme Lord's plan for me?
Again, surrender is not in your hands. The pull that you have within comes from the level of the soul, and that pull of awakening, soul awakening, happens spiritually, far from the character. The character is only a mere player in the script of the story. It goes along with the script and with the timeline of events. When the time comes for that character to surrender, it will happen. You can't make it happen. But let's say the thought comes to your mind that you'd like to surrender to the Lord's will, you'd like to surrender to your Holy Master, then that's an early sign. The mere fact that you're contemplating something like that means the time is coming near. But if you're incapable of even thinking of such things, then you are far from that goal.
Thank you. I've got questions around navigating relationships. How can I establish healthier boundaries with others while practicing compassion?
You see, the relationships that you have in life are predetermined. It's not in your hands who you're going to associate with and who you're not, and the degree of involvement you'll have with them. However, if you're a spiritual practitioner following the 5 precepts, do no harm and so on, good conduct and everything, then naturally your dealings with anyone, not just relationships, will always be in the best manner and conducive to spiritual welfare. So first learn the principles. The most important one is do no harm. Whatever you say or do to them, think before you speak, think before you act, and think before you even think. Is this thought, is this speech, is this action going to cause some harm? Now this is a very controversial point, because the universal law of creation operates differently to human law or human understanding. For example, here, they all say to speak the truth. Even Master will say, speak the truth no matter what. You could do that, but if that truth results in harm to the young child by telling it the truth, or to an adult by saying they're pig ugly and so on, because that's how you feel, then is that truth really beneficial? So the universal law of do no harm is the leveler here. Is the fundamental law that governs karma. Yeah? Being truthful means really don't be dishonest. Don't deceive anybody. Don't cheat anyone.
But isn't it about partly how you present that information?
You can try your best, but it's the ego. Why do you want to tell the truth? Because you have something the other person doesn't know and you feel good about telling them.
But I thought it was more sometimes in the delivery. Because, you know, when someone says, oh, does this look
I
good?
think you've missed what I've just said here.
Okay.
Most people who try to so-called tell the truth no matter what the cost is for their ego's sake. because they want to feel good about the fact that they are empowered with information and that they can deliver that information to another. This is the fundamental psychological understanding of truth that people don't realize drives them. They're driven by factors which are not based upon kindness or do no harm. It's based upon self-gain, or in some way, whether it's upping their status with that individual, or that their negative ego decides, yes, I'm going to come clean because I want to get something as a result. In other words, there's always a reward basis. The do no harm principle, in a higher sense, seeks no reward. You do not do no harm because you want something out of the deal. You do it because it's the right thing to do. Pure and simple. So this misunderstanding of people so-called being truthful is not what it seems. If you look deeper into the mindset of such individuals who do not care the consequences to the other individual, it is purely selfish. Because selfless living is to put others first before yours. That means don't try to satisfy your own needs to be the hero or to do this or to do that, but instead think of the others. Does it result in harm? If it results in harm, do not do it, even if the world perceives it as something good. You understand? This is the universal law that drives creation, and it's a very controversial one because the emotions now are kicking in. The universal law doesn't have an emotion. It's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If for whatever your reason, good intentions or not, you cause harm, you have to pay the karma for that.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
I might be misunderstanding.
Go on.
So if someone asks you something, and just supposing you want to give them a response because you know it's true, but they're hypersensitive.
Yes.
And even though you're being truthful, yeah.
But
because of their sensitivity, you think, oh gosh, I'm going to try and say it as best as I can because I'm thinking it'll probably help them.
You dumb it down.
Yeah.
For example, a child says, how was I born, mother?
Yeah.
Does the mother really go into details? Or do they just say, I got you from the hospital?
My God, yeah.
Why not just dumb it down?
Yeah. Okay.
You don't have to be brutal.
Oh, I know that. That's why I was saying
But
it's about
truth is
how
brutal.
you deliver the information.
Truth is brutal in its absolute sense.
Okay.
Therefore, even masters are careful. You know, Babaji was once asked, why don't you tell the full truth of everything? He says, because you couldn't handle it. They directly said, this questioner, to Babaji on the question and answer session, why do masters lie to us all the time?
Yeah.
And Babaji didn't say, no, masters don't lie. But he said, you cannot handle the full truth. He was understanding the universal law of do no harm, not tell the truth. Even I'm telling you the truth in a subtle way. I could, as best as possible. My role is slightly different. But I'm still being careful what I can say. You know, not that the audience here are already in tune with that way of thinking. So their understanding is different. But I could not say such things in the street.
I know.
I'll be persecuted, maybe even killed. And many saints of the past were for just simply telling the truth. Look at poor Jesus Christ. So being truthful doesn't always work in the human society. Sometimes you have to skirt around a little bit.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
What role does humility play in my interactions with others?
Again, you see, you cannot force humility. Humility comes about when one realizes one's position with others. If you understand that we're all brothers and sisters in this world, we're all co-travelers, all children of the same Lord, and therefore to harm any living being here is to harm ourselves or the Lord, natural humility comes. When we understand the plight of suffering, we understand what it is to suffer, what it is to struggle, then would we implicate that upon others? So when we have a greater understanding, greater wisdom, humility follows. Otherwise you can fake it. And some people say fake it until you make it. It's okay. If you have to fake humility, do it. Because it saves the other one some difficulty. But for a true spiritual seeker, they need to understand that this comes naturally as a result of one's spiritual awareness and progress, and not because they have simply decided it in their mind the night before that they're going to wake up and be humble from that.
Thank you. How can I remain spiritually grounded while navigating challenging relationships?
This must have been written by a woman. We have many questions like that from the female audience.
Okay, yeah, you have to explain yourself then.
Yeah. I've never had a man ask this question, so it's interesting, isn't it?
Okay.
Yes. You have to understand that all karmic relationships are karmic. In other words, two people are put together because of unsettled karma from the past. It's not that they love each other or that they have some bond or something. These are all human explanations of a more wider law called the karmic law. People are thrown together, and because there's this need to satisfy the past doings, they have feelings for each other in certain ways. They either like each other, hate each other, or are indifferent with each other. And depending upon these connections, this determines the type of life they'll have together, the way they'll live. Now, if they're in what they call a challenging or difficult relationship, usually it's because this person was your enemy in the past and you're trying to make peace with them now. So you're brought together for this reason. You should see this through with poise and balance and higher understanding and wisdom. When the person becomes challenging, just remain silent for a bit. Let it pass. Like when the hurricane comes, button down the windows and let it pass. It's best not to confront a hurricane head on. It's only going to end you in trouble. So there are many books and psychological means of dealing with challenging people. Use them, because largely they're on the right lines. From a spiritual perspective, try not to get there in the first place. If you know that this person has challenging behavior when you say certain things or do certain things, just simply try not to do it. Because after all, you have to live with them and you want to live in peace. The peaceful option would be don't aggravate them. Even if they're wrong, so to speak, in quotes, and you're right. It doesn't matter. You want to keep the peace. So what if you swallow your pride? It's like a chess game. Sometimes you sacrifice the pawns to win the game. Yeah, you have to sacrifice your pride and your ego sometimes and let the other person have the better end as they see it. You're really keeping the peace for the duration of that relationship. So there are many things written about this.
So, are you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that if you're in some sort of dynamics with someone, like the relationship's not great, it's because you need to be more settled now? You've come back to try and sort things out.
Yes,
and
it's all settlement of account.
Right, okay.
Nothing in this world happens by random chance. There's no such thing. Every breath you take, every move you make is based upon karma. Every speck of dust that you glance upon is because of karma. The dirty blob on the window that you're cleaning is because of karma. You and that blob have karma. The karma is so detailed that it goes back infinitely. Let's say for that speck of dust to be there, to wipe it off that furniture, that speck of dust didn't just appear in this life. You have had an association with that dust going back infinitely. Infinite times forward, backwards, and infinite times forward. There's no end to it.
It's an interesting concept because of all the people that I know that have got something with somebody, like some disgruntlement, whatever, if they all viewed it as, okay, I need to settle things, can you imagine how much better things would be? Of course,
if they would make the peace instead.
Yeah.
But that's where the ego comes in. When you have two egos fighting each other, they're all trying to fight. But imagine that one is a spiritual practitioner, is wise, and he realises the gameplay going on. Yeah. They back down. Let the other person have their say for the moment. Keep out of harm's way. Yeah? Until it settles down. Let it pass. Everything will end.
So the downside of not doing that is that you're going to be forever fighting. It's never going to...
And if you prefer peace, just go along with the flow. You can still do what you want when they're not around. It's never the case that they're 100% on your case. You always have moments of freedom from them. Yeah? And then you can enjoy.
Sure.
But with spiritual understanding, we are much more accepting and tolerant of other people's misgivings. And we even try to help them if we can. This is okay. You know, always think noble, always think good, always be kind in whatever you're doing. If these are your guiding principles, to do no harm, be kind, think noble, how could you ever do anything wrong?
Got another question for you based on this. So supposing you don't take that route and you're forever back and forward, does that supposedly mean that you're going to have to come back again to sort it out because you did it in this life?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
For a spiritual practitioner, however, who's been initiated, the rules are slightly different. It still applies, but they don't have to account for every single encounter in this life. Whilst the karma is generated from every moment of the life, it's still there, it's still present. That karma is handed over to the Lord, the Master. And the Master decides which of these will be paid off next, and which can be scrapped in the Shinjik karmas. So having a spiritual master in one's life is a great blessing indeed for dealing exactly with certain situations. But it also requires that you are spiritually attuned with them. Once you become spiritually attuned with the Holy Master that has initiated you, then it is very easy for that master, with one excuse or another, to simply put something to the side. They can't get rid of it, but it puts it on the back, so it doesn't have to come into play immediately. In other words, you can escape the karmic creation before you ever have to face that consequence. But a karma still stands.
Yeah.
Even when we're initiated by a perfect living master, they often say that he burns all the karmas, all the previous karmas are burnt. Not true. What happens is, and this is quite remarkable, and for anybody who witnesses this firsthand, it is awe-inspiring, is that the Master stands as ransom for you to the negative power of the Kal, literally. And Kal has to accept. So that is the law, but you don't see all of that. Masters just play it off by saying, well, you know, it's all burnt off and Masters burn the cover. What do? Do they set fire to it with a bit of paper? No, these are all expressions used to explain something very great. But Masters, being ever humble, never big themselves up what they do for you, actually. They always give the credit to somebody else, either to their master or to you even, or to some other unseen force, and they just dismiss it. Yeah, but that's actually what they do for you. So that's in the case of somebody who's initiated by a perfect living master, and particularly for one who's attuned with that master.
Thank you. Got a few questions regarding daily application. How can I transform ordinary routines into spiritual practices?
Whereas for practitioners, spiritual practitioners, it's very easy. Just do the Simran, the holy mantra. Repeat the holy names in everything you do. And do everything in the service of the Master. So when you're serving yourself, your family members or friends, you're serving the Lord. Because all are created by the Lord. So if you see your life as one of service, in which you seek no reward other than from the right of doing what is right, then you automatically act in a detached manner. Even your ordinary routines, then, even washing your body, for example, becomes a spiritual endeavor, because you're washing this body for the sake of using it for your own life here on earth, for the benefit of the Lord. You see this as a gift, and you're washing it. Again, the Lord is forever in your mind. You are constantly repeating the holy names given to you at the time of initiation. For non-initiates, it still applies. They think of their Lord or whoever they follow, and with that love and devotion, saying, I'm doing this for you, so I can become a better person, a healthier person, improved in some way to serve you in some way. So the idea of service is universal, whether initiation or not. It's just that initiates have the additional benefit of having a holy mantra that they can use, which carries an actual power to enhance whatever they're doing in a spiritual sense. But that doesn't mean that non-initiates don't benefit the same. They benefit to a lesser degree, but they still benefit.
Okay, thank you. What minor changes can I implement in my daily life to feel more connected with my Holy Master?
Well, constant remembrance. constantly reflecting on the true meaning of life, constantly reflecting on the truth. Like with anything, the more attention you give it, the more it becomes connected with you, the more it becomes part of you. So whether you're thinking of an individual you've just met constantly, as lovers do, for example, or whether it's something to do with your work and you want to perfect a particular technique, or whether it's simply thinking about the meaning of life, the more attention you place on something, focus of attention, the more that becomes connected with your thought pattern until it happens automatically. You don't have to force it.
Thank you. How can I remain dedicated to my spiritual goals in a fast-paced world? I feel like I don't have time for anything because I have so many commitments.
I think this is spoken by a true Westerner. Yes, in the Western world, the idea of life from the human perspective, the material perspective, is to cram in as much as possible. And if we don't, we sometimes think we're missing out. So much so that they've actually created a new word, an abbreviation, an acronym called FOMO, fear of missing out, which now is universally accepted as a mental disorder for certain people, in which people will have FOMO as a diagnosed illness, which recognizes it. And it's true, the World Health Organization is already looking into this.
Wow.
As a possible sign of mental kind of mental disorientation, where somebody can't cope with the demands of the world, and therefore in a particular direction, and therefore this particular one is called FOMO. And they are looking into it, and they're saying there's a very real, because there are some people who can't give a damn, they just don't care, they go with it, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. But there are other people who are really obsessed, particularly people on social media, who are constantly swiping up and down. They're the ones who cannot leave their phone for a minute because they have fear of missing out. It's a recognised now a mental health disorder, which is why they've banned smartphones in children under the age of 14 in schools and places, because it's causing mental health problems. It's taken very seriously. So the idea is to replace these activities with higher truth seeking. When it comes to you, you kind of force it.
Yeah.
If a person feels that higher truth is for them and they want to know more about it, they'll naturally pursue it. They'll naturally go about and do it. It's not something I can tell you must do. You must do what you feel is right at the time.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay, my last question regarding daily application. How can one maintain inner peace in the face of global challenges such as conflicts, economic instability, and climate change?
I would say look at it all with wonder at how the creation is panning out. We have to understand that even this universe is evolving. Everything is progressing and blossoming. And there are various stages along even the world's evolutionary progress in which certain things happen to humanity as humanity advances through the yugas. We have the 4 yugas as they advance, which I've spoken about before, so I'm not going to go into all of that now. So through each of these stages, the level of awareness of human beings changes. The level of needs and demands changes. And as a result, there are consequences to their behavior here on earth. And by seeing this consequence, we're going through now this transition phase between Kali Yuga and Dwapar Yuga. And this transition phase is a kind of unsettling phase until 2035. So therefore, humanity now is going through a change and conflict of where it's heading, what its ideals are. There's civil unrest, economic problems, all kinds of challenges that are afflicting humanity as they decide what they want to be in years to come. With any change in society, there has to be some sort of a mechanism or unrest that shifts them from one state of mind to another state of mind. But sometimes that shifting causes conflict with those who are stuck in a certain set of minds, who resist that change. And they think, no, everything is wonderful, we should carry on. So yes, these conflicts are there. They're all karmic, And therefore, from a spiritual point of view, just watch it and enjoy the show, but don't take part. Yeah?
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions around suffering. What types of suffering could I endure if I sincerely beseech God to uncover the truth for me at any cost?
This is a very serious question, because there are very few in this world spiritual practitioners who would be prepared to know the truth at any cost. Now, knowing the truth doesn't mean automatically suffering. It's not a punishment to know the truth. So firstly, let's eliminate that. What do you consider as punishment in your quest to know the truth? Giving up all that you currently cherish and value and that possess and attach to. We consider it to be suffering, because most people associate loss of all these comforts with suffering. But let's say you have reached a state of awareness where you understand the futility of these things, and now they're just getting in the way of your peace of mind. You just give them up naturally as you make progress. Then there's no suffering. What suffering are you having to know the truth, to uncover the truth? As the truth is being uncovered, you're just giving these things up, which is actually the way it happens. If you accelerate this process, let's say you asked a holy master, the Lord, please quickly enlighten me. He says, okay. He said, but can you cope with it? He said, yes, because theoretically they have conceptual understanding. And of course, when they're then put through the paces to speed up the karmic clearance and change of life and attitude, they can't handle it. They say, no, please stop, I can't take it. There's a famous case at the time of Great Master, in fact, when this man was so impressed by the satsang. He used to regularly attend the satsang, Indian gentleman in his middle age. His family had grown to a point, his children were now teenagers doing their own things. And he decided that the time was now for him to become truly enlightened. And he was a great Sevadar. I'm not going to give his name because he has still family surviving. He was a great Sevadar at the time of Great Master. And he used to always sit in satsang very much fixated on the Master, very much fixated on Great Master, and was pouring with love and devotion. And he really just wanted to now see the Master within and just have the absolute truth revealed to him. So generally the mornings, Great Master used to do his personal meetings between 9:30 and about midday before his lunch. He set aside when he was at Adela for personal meetings. And what that meant was anybody could put their name down and have a personal meeting with Great Master. So he put his name on the list. And his turn came. And of course he asked Great Master that fateful question. He said, Master, he said, I'm so enamored with you, you're so beautiful, I want nothing but to know the truth of all of this. Why am I so in love with you? Why on this journey? What is this life all about for me? I'm not satisfied by anything here. Show me the full truth. And Great Master said, are you sure you're ready for this? He said, yes, Master, please, just give it to me now, instantly. He said truth could be given to you instantly. Because actually, just before that, by the way, when Master gave his lengthy satsangs, he spoke about that a truth realization could be done instantly. Right, like that, click of a finger, it can be done, technically. So he really took that on board. So I thought, right. He said, just snap your finger, he says, and I want to be instantly enlightened. The Great Master laughed and said, are you sure this is what you want? He said, yes, Master, no matter what the cost, he said. Which is a famous saying in spirituality, no matter what the cost. He says, okay. So Master just placed his hand on his forehead, his fingers, and transmitted all the knowledge to him. And the man started hailing around, no, he couldn't cope. He was in such a state of disorientation, confusion, almost pain, that this man was visibly moaning and groaning and suffering. He was agitated. He said, please, stop. So Great Master stopped. Said, okay. And he gave him the attention back. So he just gave him a glimpse His great master said, I have only given you a glimpse, not even the full immersion in it. And he could not handle the glimpse. He said, wait until the time is ready. He said, and then, he says, you'll have the full thing yourself. Naturally, you'll be in that position. So, it's...
Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, generally it's the motto.
Yeah.
Masters even said it, even Babaji always says that, be careful what you ask for. Because you won't be able to take it at this stage. Complete surrender. You know, particularly if you're a family man, or you have particular attachment to your work, or to this life in some form, or even to your clothes or your body, to forcibly be dragged away from all of that into the unknown is more than the mind can bear. Yes.
What was it that he couldn't take? Was it the fact that he was leaving his body, or what he's experiencing?
Firstly was, yes, because when you initially withdraw the consciousness, you die. He was a rehearsal to die. So he crossed the boundary between life and death, and he was in a death state where no longer he would be able to ever see his family again, or have this connection here in the physical world. So that fear came to him. Then he was overwhelmed by the experiences. The experiences were so enamored, so entrancing and so confusing that they actually disorientated the mind, because he had not gone through the stages of evolution. Therefore, he was totally overwhelmed. It's like, for example, let's say you're learning a language, a foreign language, and you're just learning A, B, C and a few words. Suddenly a fully fledged person from that country comes and starts speaking to you in fast tongue. You're totally overwhelmed by it.
So he was taken, like, beyond the causal plane.
He was shown everything.
Because people do that all the time, don't they? Astral project and stuff, they don't seem to...
Astral projection is very different. Astral projection does not leave the physical world at all. Astral projection is projecting the attention beyond the physical body in this universe, in this world. They just call it astral projection because they've just taken that name from Eastern mysticism, but it's got nothing to do with entering the astral realm, believe me. None of these people see, they travel to different houses, they go to different planets, they can go different, and yes, you can do all of that. Astral projection is very different. It's not a spiritual experience directly. It's a physical experience.
The NDEs are spiritual experiences.
That's different. And even then, what are they shown? A bit of light, a one being, nothing much. Nothing significant, because they wouldn't be able to handle it. And NDEs are based upon a karmic level of attainment, not based upon the Lord forcibly giving them to a higher state of existence which they cannot cope with. Everything has to happen gradually. Yeah? Imagine you have a 2-year-old, and suddenly the 2-year-old is blessed becoming an 18-year-old without all having crossed through all the stages of development. And now they're expected to behave like an 18-year-old. What do you think the 8-year-old would do? They would go crazy.
The story you mentioned there, wasn't that the story where he was taken, like, before creation began?
Sorry?
Is it, he pulled him beyond, like, before...
Don't worry about where he pulled it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's between him and his master. But let's say he was given sufficient glimpse to totally disorientate him and give him such a great discomfort that he asked to be reunited with his former self. Okay? I'm just giving an example that it is possible theoretically, but undesirable to become suddenly enlightened. There has to be a stages of development. Just like a 2-year-old cannot become an 18-year-old in just a click of an arm. Yeah? Okay, next.
Thank you. Last question on suffering.
Right.
What are some examples of historical or spiritual figures who have faced suffering as part of their discipleship, and what can we learn from their experiences?
Goodness, there's quite a few. I mean, I can give some summary of some that people would know of. I mean, for example, you have the most famous among them in the figure of Jesus the Christ, who was famously crucified on the cross. Then you have Guru Arjan Dev of the Sikh faith, who was made to sit on a hot iron plate while boiling oil was poured over him. Then you have the Buddha, who was poisoned by mushrooms in his later years. Then you have Prophet Muhammad, who was harassed and threatened in Mecca before moving to Medina to settle peacefully, though that did not last either. Then you have the famous Kabir Sahib of the 14th century in India, who was continuously harassed by the Brahmins of the time, the religious priests of the time, who tried all sorts of things to suppress him, such as binding him up and throwing him into a fast-flowing river to drown, but he survived. Attempted to have him trampled by a maddened elephant, in which they had given some herbs to eat, which turned the elephant crazy, and they set, laying Kabir on the floor, they set the elephant onto him. It was a crazy method, but they wanted, because in those days to directly assassinate a spiritual being by your hand was considered to be sinful, so they had to do it some other means. They had to employ other means, so why don't you just kill him, but nobody would dare do that, they were scared. So they tried these other means. So they said, right, let's get this elephant. And the elephant simply stopped, even though it was crazy, and knelt on its knees and raised his trunk and made a triumphant salute and wouldn't trample Kabir. So, and the other times they would just simply shout him down during his discourses. So he had a lot of hassles, but he still managed to live till 120 and managed to set a great path which led to the current Sant that we know today. So despite all what he endured, we have a legacy today of Santmat that we owe to him mostly. He's considered the father of Santmat because of that. Then we have the beloved Palta Sahib, a saint who I had great respect for, because in former incarnation I was there with him. And he was burnt alive in his grocery store near the end of his time because he dared to speak the truth against the religious sects, saying that we are all one. Again, the Brahmins were responsible, as usual, in India, because the Brahmins believed that only through them can you contact God, and everybody else is impure. And what Palta Sahib was saying, he said, no, everybody has the Lord within them, and they can connect directly. They don't need to use the Brahmins or pay them for anything. It was a lucrative business in those days. The Brahmins were paid a lot of money to have people do all their prayers and blessings for them, because they weren't allowed to do it. So they decided they had enough of him, and they burnt him alive in his grocery store. Very, very sad thing. But so that's how he ended. And he was a great saint of 18th century.
So
in
did
northern
these
India.
people have a lot of karma then?
Yes, because they inherit karma. When a sant or any holy individual comes into this world, they have no karma to bring them here. They have to take on a body.
Who did this to him?
Of course they had karma, but he forgave them.
Oh.
Anybody who perpetrates against an enlightened one, the enlightened one automatically forgives them because they don't know what they're doing. Jesus famously said that on the cross. He said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. So luckily for those torturers, there'd be no consequence to them of any harm they did to the enlightened ones. But then, in more recent times, we have, say, Ishwar Puriji, who was in our lifetime, who was harassed in the 1970s by improper allegations from a sector of the Sangha, of the RSSB group, of the time that ousted him out of their satsang centres, so that he had to set out completely alone in the West, much to our benefit. But still he had to endure that ongoing. Then you have Supreme Master Ching Hai, who was harassed by the Florida state officials for building a spiritual colony in their state on new land. And then again in Europe, for causing disruption or problems for local inhabitants due to flocks of people turning up to spiritual events that she had arranged that wasn't welcomed by the local populations, who bitterly complained. So she was told to leave. Yeah? And this happened to such a point that she became officially a persona non grata in certain countries, in many countries, so she cannot travel there anymore, even to those countries. So you can see even today how this happens. And finally we have Babaji of the Bias faith, in RSSB faith in Bias, who has been plagued by financial fraud allegations in recent years by his business partners, whom he allegedly collaborated with, but has got nowhere, but it's still there in the media. So as you can see, the persecution of holy figures throughout history is ongoing by the ignorant masses. Similarly, high-ranking disciples have always been harassed for their boldness in speaking the truth, or just for their very existence and different ways about them, that the masses misinterpreted as something bad or sinister, because they're being influenced by the negative power in creation, whose job is to stop spiritual progress here. So there's a battle between the forces of good versus the forces of bad, the classic confrontation. And there are many others whom I can mention who you've never heard of. So yes, this harassment of spiritual figures, spiritual leaders and so on, is ongoing, as long as they're the insincere masses who are led by their emotions rather than by even their intellect or higher awareness. Yes, yes.
You place Osho in that same group?
Yes, everybody who spoke something about spirituality all had difficulties. So yes, he had his fair share of critics and difficulties as well. So even the Satguru, Satguru, he's had a lot of difficulties, mainly by politicians and by certain sectors who see him as a threat in India, because he's establishing the universal Dharma, and he accepts all faiths. So from the current model viewpoint in India, only Hinduism should be prevalent. So he's come into conflict with the authorities, and he's doing nothing wrong, just giving his teaching.
Governments think of them as threats as well, don't they? Governments.
Yes. Oh yes. Especially they have great influence and a lot of financial backing. So yes, they become political. That's what happened even in the time of Jesus. The politicians got involved. Otherwise, who would bother about a lone rabbi preacher wearing a loincloth and sandals, and often barefoot, walking in the streets of the desert? Why would the Roman authorities bother with somebody like that, unless it came to their attention that he was possibly a threat to their command? So yeah, total misunderstandings.
Is there something generic or overarching that we can learn from all these different sufferings?
I wish we would, but history told us differently. You would have thought that since the time of Jesus and so on, that we would have learned our lesson. But no, they're still at it today. Anybody who is telling the truth spiritually, and naturally because of their way of life they're a bit different, or they think differently, or they act differently, harmlessly, but is taken and misconstrued by the public as something sinister or bad, yeah, sure, they're going to be persecuted by the mainstream masses. It has always been that way. It goes with a job description.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of Supreme Master Ching Hai, I've got a few questions that relate to her in particular.
Okay.
First question is this. Could you please clarify the recent message from Supreme Master Ching Hai titled Fear for the World's Destruction Karma, dated the 2nd of April 2025, and it was a YouTube video that went out?
Yes, I've had quite a few since this came out. I've had quite a few emails regarding this quite spectacular revelation, let's say, about what is coming for us. And just for those who don't know, what it's saying is that in May or June, between May and say June in particular, but maybe even up to November, there'll be mass global destruction of this world as the poles shift and the force of nature wrench the earth apart and cause dramatic climate change and horrific, let's say, natural disasters that will kill about 67% of the population, she says, and there's nothing we can do about it. And she was weeping and upset about it. What can we do? And this remedy was only for all of us to do 11 hours of meditation every day. So that's what they are talking about. Now you have to understand that Supreme Master's ideology and methodology is very different to us Westerners. In her case, there is a misunderstanding. Firstly, English is not her first language. So the emphasis she makes upon certain things may be over-dramatized. The actual truth is that there are, in this year, coming great natural disasters for us. I have spoken about, and world conflicts and difficulties. But I'm sorry to say, no, the poles have already shifted. They're 1,000 miles off their course, but that doesn't mean that the Earth is going to be torn apart. We're not going to flip this year. Yes, it's overdue for a flip, but it's not going to happen this year. So she's basing the argument based upon scientific revelations that were given at the time to say that this is where we seem to be heading, and that the implications of this is wide. So it was an explanation of what scientists think is coming our way, because the pole is shifting quite fast now across, and there's uses that this is an indication it's going to totally flip, and it's going to destroy the magnetic field, which means the radiation from the sun will hit us, damage us. Every living thing will be implicated with a massive extinction event of life forms here, and catastrophic for obviously humans. Although humans can shelter themselves in some ways animals cannot. But that's what that was all about. So don't read too much into it. It's not as bad as she's saying, but what she's talking about are possibilities. And she said if it does happen, it'll be a major catastrophic event, and the Satsangis can spare themselves by doing at least 11 hours of meditation a day to help them survive, to earn enough merit for them to survive. That's the prediction. I can tell you it's not going to happen that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
If my current master is Supreme Master Ching Hai, does that limit my liberation to just the 5th level?
I don't think we should look at masters and their levels directly. What we should think about is, are their teachings resonating with us? Are we aligned to them? If we feel aligned with what somebody is saying, we should follow them to the natural conclusion. That could be anybody. It could be your teacher in your college. It could be a parent. It could be a teacher in a temple. It could be a renunciate, a walking monk, or it could be a holy master. I think we shouldn't distinguish too much, because we're not in a position to know at this stage. When we come to the position to know, then naturally knowledge is there, the observances are there, and we can make our decisions there. So what I'm saying is that anyone who directs you to focus your attention within and tells you to give up the ego and mind is always good. And don't worry about how far they take you. Let's just get there first, to what they are saying, and then we can look at it further on there. It's never time wasted, because once you've attained that level, you don't have to go back to the beginning because you're reinitiated. It's not like, okay, you've gone so far with a particular master, you have to come back to the beginning to start again with a new master. It doesn't work like that. All the ground that you have made counts in your favor, even in the next birth. So let's say you've attained Brahman. So now you're Brahmandi, you've got that wisdom and knowledge. Then the next birth you'll be born in a position where you could become initiated by a Sant Satguru to take you to Satgurus. But you won't have to start from the physical. You will automatically, upon initiation, immediately go to Brahman and carry on from there. So this is why we shouldn't, because we're not in a position to know the level of any master, truly. And we're not in a position to judge. So what we should think about is, does it resonate with us? Is what they're saying connecting with our deeper sense of awareness? If we have resonance with that, we should run with it. Because surely that one's going to take us better than we are now, in a better position. As far as they can take you. And then they'll say to you, that's the maximum I can offer you. Now you need to find somebody else. You know, so it's important that we don't go into these comparisons too much.
Thank you. Okay, last question regarding Supreme Master Ching Hai. I know you have talked about this before, but can you explain the focus of Supreme Master Ching Hai's teaching compared to Babaji and Ishwar Puriji? And also, are there other masters emerging?
Well, I think the most obvious difference, I can answer this in general terms. Again, I'm not trying to put one master against another. Each master who comes here has a slightly different purpose for their visit. So, for example, Supreme Master Ching Hai, her emphasis is on global reform. So veganism, climate change, improving standard of living, better lifestyle and so on. That's her primary directive. Yeah, improving the lot of humanity, which is a noble thing in itself. And tied to that is an inner awareness of higher states of existence. Now, for example, Babaji, his awareness is, his ethos is to understand that we're more than the physical being, that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And therefore we should get in tune with that within ourselves. And the only way to do that is to connect with the sound of our soul, called the Shabad Dun. So his emphasis is on meditation practice and connecting with our higher inner self to realize the full truth gradually, blossomingly, as we make spiritual progress. And Ishwarji was very much in line with the Western audience. So he started off by giving us an intellectual understanding of the spiritual path, a lot of conceptual understanding, and trying to get us to the point where we actually meditate and fall in love with the truth of the marvel of existence. So he's very much an explanatory guru, in which he gave a lot of explanations, a lot of detailed things, which we fall in love with that, so much so that we fall in love with the person who gives it. So his path was mainly emphasized on love, a connection with love and a personal connection with Master, through the truth, that the Master carries the truth within them, and that was the main emphasis. And he used intellectual understanding predominantly to garnish the Western audience, to harness the Western audience towards that higher truth seeking. And then said that meditation would take you the rest of the way. Yes?
In Supreme Master's video last week, I found it interesting that she was saying that if you were a Sikh and you couldn't reach her, to go to Bias.
Yes. It's true. The Masters recognize each other. And they know who are the other Masters.
She was saying go to Deva Bias.
Yes.
If you can't reach her.
Yes. Yes. There's a lot to that which I won't go into now. But there is a very specific reason for that as well.
You can't say what?
Not really. It's not appropriate for me to say in the public audience. I know she's not usually, but there is a particular reason. So that's on a personal level. We can talk if you want to know more about that, but not for a public audience. Okay.
Are there other masters emerging?
Yes, there are. And you want names and addresses? No, I'm not going to give you names and addresses and telephone numbers and emails. Yes, there are masters emerging, particularly in the West. And they are, you could say, masters in the making. Just wait and see. Once they have been given authority to initiate or to explain themselves, then they will do so. But we just have to be patient right now and wait and see.
Okay, thank you. Right,
I think we're lucky to see 3 masters in our lifetime.
Yes, but historically there'd be more than that, up to 8 or 9.
Lifetime.
Up to 8 or 9 fifth level masters can exist. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen them now.
Yes. Well, the people of the time, yes, because we have global communication now. So we're in a fortunate position. But judging by the progress of many individuals I have seen, it doesn't seem to have made much difference whether they've seen one or three.
Oh, shame.
Yeah. I think somehow, if it was a case of just following the masters or meeting up with them for spiritual progress, then there'd be far more enlightened people in this world than there are now. I've never had people who are constantly around Babaji all the time, for example, constantly attending to him. And he's a high-level master, yet they're not enlightened. So it was based upon the fact that there was a physical association with the master or seeing them, then that would be great news for us. But unfortunately, the law of spirituality and karma must prevail. And everything happens on a timeline of events, and you have to slowly walk up the rungs of each rung of the ladder to get to your destination. Whether you see 100 masters or whether you see one. You know, at the time of Great Master and the children in the Murray Hills, where he had his gardens, and he used to have a kind of a little farm there, and he loved going there during the summer months very much because it was cooler, you see, a little bit in the hills. And the children there were so innocent, you know, they didn't even see the town. They just lived in the villages there on the hills. None of them had seen even a car, right? So as young as 6, he initiated them. And they straightway started having inner experiences. You know, imagine that. So one encounter with one master, they didn't need the whole internet thing or social media or anything. And they started having inner experiences and developed. So it's based upon the level of devotion somebody has, their readiness, rather than how many masters they see and how many times they visit the master and so on. In fact, in this day and age now, the problem with global communications is that you'll have a lot of people who don't really qualify for the master's attention coming to the master to see them. Whereas in the past, when the master and his entourage wandered about, he knew in each village, he had a list of names. He knew in each village who would come. So he went to this village here and there, they walked about, and they initiated those people, just those particular ones who were destined on the list, you see. But now, because of this global communication, anybody can get initiated by Babaji. So now Babaji has taken the role of initiating by proxy. So he has such a large Sangha. So what that means is that he initiates on the behalf of a future master. He puts them onto the path, knowing full well that they're going to be lousy disciples and may even go against him. And that they will have to come back again. A majority of them will have to come back again and carry on in the next birth and be initiated by another master of the day, and that will be the master who hopefully will take them back. So Babaji initiates just because they asked. Because they asked, their karmic connection is there, they're at the right place at the right time, they've asked, he said, okay, sure. But if you want to guarantee that I'm going to be the one who sees you at the time of death and I'm going to take you back, no, I can't guarantee that. So he lets them read the books, they get familiar with it all, they have all these idealisms in their mind, these dreams, thinking that that's what's going to happen for them. And then Babaji, of course, himself dropped the bombshell. He said, no, Master won't necessarily come for you at the time of death, unless you're connected with him. And to build a personal connection with him, you have to be in list A, not in list B. So, unfortunately, most of his Sangat are in list B, and even list C, if there is such a list. In the sense that they will not follow anything at all. They should get initiated because their family members are. They should join it because it's a cultural club. So eventually, the Radhaswami Satsang Vyasa in India will become a religion. And it'll become a world-class religion. Very organised, very corporate. And in fact, the changes already started to happen.
He's passing everything on to the new
Yes, to a corporate manager.
Mm-hmm.
So everything will change, as I've mentioned before. And therefore the spiritual axis, the central spiritual axis in India will move to the west. And spirituality in India will become a philosophy. Yeah. So there are changes coming. Yes.
So would that mean a new line will start then from Dera?
Yes. There'll be a new line from Dera, Bias. No.
So it ends?
Yes. And then eventually the Bias river, over 100 years or so, will reclaim the entire colony. So over 100 years' time, there won't be anything left of the original. except for the Satsangara. That will still remain. That's the only thing. It will go up to the border of the Satsangara and stop.
Sad.
So this is how things happen in history. Okay? We have very little of what existed at the time. Because nothing in this world is real. The idea is not to worship the things of the world, but to connect with the truth within us and focus on that and get the hell out of here. This will never be a paradise.
Everything is temporary, isn't it?
Everything is temporary, and everything is a mixture of good and bad. This world is based upon pairs of opposites, of pain and pleasure in equal measure. Therefore, this world can never be a paradise and it can never be a hell. It has to be a mix of in between. It always will be. So that's enough to disorientate you to say, well, I don't know where I fit in this world, because I'm here wanting a peaceful life, and then there's hellish things going on at the same time. I don't want to be part of all this, I want to get out. You see? Whereas if this was all hell, then you'd just accept it. There's nothing but hell. So what is there else to look forward to?
Well, isn't during the Satgurus majority blissful?
That's why in Satyug there's no holy masters. Because everybody's born with a certain enlightenment frame who comes into that era. And they enjoy living their enlightenment semi-paradise state. Still there's the forces of nature and difficulties, but generally humans don't war with each other or fight each other or cheat each other and so on. They don't even build anything. They don't build great skyscrapers or empires. They don't use technology because their whole life is based upon meditation and spiritual practice.
But they lose out on not having a master.
Yes, because they're enjoying an era, a great era of peace and wonderment. They don't have any interest in seeking higher truth. Yeah. That's it. Next question then.
Okay, I've got 4 questions left, so if anyone's got any questions, you can start getting them ready.
Right.
And these are off-theme topics,
Okay.
so we can go anywhere with these.
Okay.
Right.
Hopefully we'll stick to spiritual content. Yes.
They have the spiritual aspect, yeah.
Right, that's fine.
Can you provide more details about the timing of a pole shift? The 3
The
days
timing of a pole shift.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, the 3 days of darkness many speak of, and the collapse of the Western economy.
Goodness. Okay.
Pole shift, darkness, Western economy.
I've always said that if a person asks a question formally, I'm obliged to answer it,
Yeah.
but I can choose how to answer it. Okay, well, let's be practical about this. Well, yes, scientists know that the magnetic poles shift every 250,000 years or so, causing planetary devastation. And as we speak, the Earth's magnetic north pole is currently shifting towards Russia, particularly Siberia, and this movement has been accelerated in recent decades. Though it has slowed down a bit in the last few years, so that's why we're not sure where we're heading with that, where it currently sits around 1,000 miles east of its original bearing, heading towards Siberia, shifting at a rate of around 22 miles per year. That has been measured since 1831, when they started measuring it. So this is science, right? And of course, this shifting every year of 22 miles is impacting all navigation systems, which you take for granted, which requires yearly updates to the world magnetic model for navigation bearings. So that means your GPS systems, missile guidance systems, and all other systems that use navigation for magnetic north have to be adjusted every year. So if you had one from the previous years and you're not adjusted, and then you were to try to rely upon that to detect, to go to a particular destination based upon the previous data, you'd go into the wrong place. You'd end up ultimately 22 miles off. Right? So that's that. It's important to note, though, that the Earth's magnetic field has undergone numerous reversals of polarity in the past, with the magnetic north and south poles flipping completely, reversing. So the north becomes the south and the south becomes the north, with devastating consequences to the world in the sense of the magnetic field, because then the magnetic field gets disrupted, it's weak, and we can be harmed by radiation and so on. In other words, it's not a good event. The last one occurred, though, around 780,000 years ago. So it's vastly overdue for a complete flip right now, which is why scientists are watching this 22 miles, and if it starts speeding up, because it did speed up a few decades ago to 55 miles per year, and then it slowed down again, and nobody's really sure whether this means, I mean, after all, it's 1,000 miles off its original bearing. Completely 1,000 miles. So they said, well, what does it take for it to flip? They just don't know. But because it's vastly overdue, and they know that such an event would have massive global catastrophe event to the climate, the oceans in particular, the ecology and movement of the oceans, which rely on the magnetic north to south cooling, heating to move the currents of the ocean, the deep currents that keep the nutrients going and keep the oxygen level stable in the atmosphere. It's quite serious business. So the ecology of species, including human beings, would undergo a massive extinction event. So, you know, it's pretty serious, which is why scientists are very concerned about how we're going to cope with it, because there's no defense at all. I mean, meanwhile, the sun that you spoke about during what is known as the solar cycle, the magnetic field of the sun reverses roughly around every 11 years or so over the past few centuries, causing massive dark spots to appear on its surface, which expels much more radiation than normal. So scientists have known about this for years, but occasionally some of these events are so massive, these black areas become so big and the expulsion of radiation is so massive that they could seriously disrupt all electrical systems on Earth, plunging the world into utter darkness till repairs can be made, totally frying the electrical grids and any electronic items plugged in. All of it would be gone, all the computers, everything. We would just about generate electricity back in about 3 days, it's estimated, and we'd only have light power, but all computers would be gone. You know, we can manufacture new ones every time. It'd be a terrible time for that. The consequences of that 3-day thing. So some of these. So the next serious event is due in several years.
Several?
Yeah, several years. I'm not going to tell you when.
Okay.
Causing the 3 days of total darkness, and because of this, scientists have backup systems. They have deep underground electrical systems that the radiation cannot penetrate through, and they're ready to keep government going should such an event take place. All countries have signed up to this except the very poor. So the mainframe computers, everything will still be working. Communications will be working after 3 days. Your home computers, your home electronics will be fried. That's nothing you can do about that unless you have an underground bunker about 200 feet deep at least. Yeah, you know, you dug in the garden, make it radiation proof. So, yeah, your equipment. I would say that's not a bad thing if we can get rid of some of these mobile phones and stop people obsessing on their phones. I think we'll turn us back to an agricultural economy, and you know, where we'll be growing our own food for the allotment in the garden. We'll be actually communicating with our neighbours and learning their names even. You know, things. I think it'd be nice to be a friendlier community than we are today. So yeah, I mean that's that, and the collapse regarding the collapse of Western economies. Well, that really started around 2012 with the massive growth spurt of the eastern economies of China and India and surrounding territories that continues to grow at an alarming rate for the West. Very soon, and beginning this year in fact, China will outperform the US in economic power and will hold the world to ransom through its global mine holdings and rare earth metals control, financial loans to Western economies that very little is spoken about, and growing military power. So China will become a force to reckon with in the future, and the West really will have to make some serious friendly negotiations with China, because it's not going to stop. And its demands, for example, in Taiwan, it will try to completely take over Taiwan. Supreme Master Ching Hai is currently staying, which is going to stop her from being able to bring any teachings out. That may happen this year, a little bit, or some moves towards it. So in regards to that, Supreme Master said that her channel, Supreme Master TV, after June this year will stop broadcasting in anticipation of the blockade and the things that are to come. Not a good year for our economies, that as a result of China and also the crazy economic policies in the US, that with global trade agreements that will stifle manufacturing and industry and cause severe drop in the finance markets, as I mentioned some years ago, would happen in 2025. So yes, there's interesting times ahead. True spiritual practitioners can just watch with wonderment. They won't be too much affected. Others, well, there'll be varying degrees depending upon their karma. So, yeah, I hope that covers it. Anybody else wants to ask about that? No? Good, let's move on.
Okay, next question. This is quite personal, but it could relate to others as well. This concerns a family member who must decide early in her pregnancy whether to keep the baby, taking into account her age, financial situation, and relationship status. Since Ishwar Puriji mentioned that the soul doesn't enter the embryo until the 5th month of pregnancy, question is, can the woman choose to end the life even if the heart is already beating? And they go on to say it poses a significant moral dilemma to many. What role does being a satsangi have as their duty?
Okay, a few points. Firstly, I think there's a mistake in the interpretation of what Ishwarji said. The soul actually enters the fetus at the 3-month mark, which is why after 3 months it's very difficult to have a miscarriage. Usually all miscarriages occur within the first 3 months, and all the difficulties, and each culture knows this. So it's always the 3-month mark before you can say that the pregnancy is secure and certain, and even in some cultures they don't speak about it until the 3 months. They say, especially in India, don't tell anybody for 3 months. Exactly for that reason. However, from the moment of conception, the soul is allocated that particular birth. So although it doesn't enter, at the moment of conception it is allocated a particular body. So one could argue that the moment of conception, then it's, the soul is connected and present, not present but connected. At the 3-month mark, definitely. I think the 5th month is just a reinforcement. It's not really significant as a growth from there. Right, regarding her question, obviously the taking of any life is wrong, knowingly so. There are always options available. And even if she doesn't want the child for whatever reason it is, there's many adoption agencies out there. You can have the child and have it adopted. Why do you have to kill the child? It's not necessary. Yeah? In the modern day, we have many facilities now for parents who cannot, for one reason or another, keep the baby. I mean, in this case, they're talking about financially and so on, and relationship status. So this person's in an uncertain relationship, and they're not sure whether they're going to stay with that individual. It's not a good relationship. Financially, they're not able to take on another mouth, particularly if that partner was to leave. And the fact that she's of a young age. It's a difficult circumstance, but this is all karma. And I think that this is where the family should support this lady. And it may be the case that you can have a natural miscarriage, so it might just vacate itself. But if not, then yes, keep the support, because you never know what will happen once that baby reaches full term, is delivered. situations change, things change. Just because you're looking at the current situation doesn't mean the future is going to be the same. Life is unpredictable and throws you all kinds of twists and turns. So you just don't know. But remember the principle of do no harm? So on that basis, you should not knowingly harm any living thing, even a prospective living thing. You know, the adoption agencies are there. Other people might want to take care. Even she might change her mind and suddenly say, oh, I think I want this baby. It happens a lot. That's what I believe. But of course, you know, you can make your own choice based upon your limited knowledge. But since you're asking me, I would say that the correct, from a spiritual perspective, the correct action would be to go with the flow, see what happens. If the child is delivered and you can't deal with it or cope with it or whatever, then give it up for adoption. And maybe introduce later on, or fostering even.
Thank you. Okay, next question. As a spiritual practitioner, I wonder whether an initiate suffering from illness and nearing death should avoid mind-altering medications. The reason I ask is that here in the United States, we have utilised hospice care for some family members, and they typically prescribe medications such as morphine and haloperidol, which can cause hallucinations and sedation. I recall hearing it is better to remain clear-minded at the time of death to remember one's master. I understand we're supposed to be free of worries and that our master will take care of us.
Okay, so I take it that the question is whether one should use pain managing medications,
yeah,
which
mind
are mind altering.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they prescribe for pain.
Pain, yeah.
Okay. So it's the reason you're taking them. They're not recreational drugs. So from a Sant point of view, it is perfectly fine to give pain relief medication given for that purpose, even if that results in hallucinations and so on. Like they mentioned morphine and haloperidol. Yeah, they can result in hallucinations. Not always. It's not a guarantee, however, but they can. But they are mainly prescribed for pain relief and settling one down. So that doesn't affect their spiritual progress. Spiritual progress actually happens from within, between soul to soul, not the character of the mind. The sedation doesn't sedate the soul. The sedation effect only sedates the mind. Now, from an external point of view, when somebody's not on these mind-altering drugs, and they are, let's say, an initiate, and they can recite the names within them consciously, then the others outside can feel happy that this person is in a position to continue their spiritual practicing, to remember the master at the time of death. But what they forget is that it's not in their hands whether you remember the master or not at the time of death, actually. It's the master who decides whether you have enough merit in your life to warrant a visit. So whether this person is on morphine or haloperidol or other things or not, if the master is destined to greet this one up to 3 days before their passing or at the time of their death, then the master will still come, regardless. What they can do instead is just put some spiritual talks or Shabbat spiritual songs and things near this individual, even whilst they're under the influence, and subliminally they can still register this. You know, it's not the case that they're totally disconnected from the outside world. It just appears so. They're almost like a coma type state, but they can actually still subliminally recognize certain things, voices and everything. It can influence them, and that's the best thing they could do. They shouldn't worry too much. If this person has done enough spiritual practice, why are they worried? And if they haven't, it's too late now anyway to try and catch up.
Sure.
They can have to make amends in the next birth. Okay.
Thank you. This is my last question now. What is the significance of the numbers 144,000 and 666 in the Bible? Are the revelations in the Holy Bible true?
Okay, this is they're referring here to the Christian Bible,
Yeah.
the Holy Christian Bible, and in Revelations, which was a book that was added a lot later on, and is often not considered to be part of the true Bible because it was added couple of hundred years later from stories that were gathered around surrounding the mainstream Bible, and they were just put together. Nobody really knows the source of the revelations or their meaning because they're just a haphazard group of entries that were added much later. So the original Codex Bible didn't have revelations, so it was added much later. So let's put that straight first. I mean, numbers have always been significant in astrology and numerology because the whole world is mathematical. That's why we have the laws of nature and the force of nature, and we have physics and maths that make precise technological items, so we know it's correct. Back in those days, they didn't have the technology understanding, but they knew the significance of numbers. So the numbers 666 appears in Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, I think, where the Apostle John is said to have stated, although there's no evidence of this, but it's said to have stated that this calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast. So that's the introduction of the beast. The 666 represents beast in some meanings. For it is the number of a man to come. Interesting, he says. So this man beast, this beast man, and that number, he said, is 666. So that's where this kind of understanding of 666 significance came about. Now, the number refers to the spiritual imperfection of an individual, or the antichrist, as they called it in astrology, which they termed a beast, because it's not literally a beast. It's a colloquial term, beast, metaphorical term, to refer to the fact that this person will not be enlightened, but will be brutal in their administration of their teachings, beast-like or brutal. So it is also the symbol of a powerful, oppressive force, often interpreted as a political or religious system that opposes God or true God in the future, such as rampant capitalism, where it states in Revelation 13, chapter 13, verses 16 to 17, that no one will be able to buy or sell without the mark of the name of the beast upon it. Meaning that the beast, in this case capitalism, will have total control. The government will have total control over what you can buy or sell with taxes and VAT and other things, or even what you can sell, permitted to sell. So they're just looking ahead in time, perhaps in a modern economy. Or it refers to a new religious order of force and aggression via mass expansion that would follow Christianity in the same region. So there are several kinds of interpretations that you can take from this. Okay? But that was the basis upon which this was originally created. Now, meanwhile, looking at in the book of Revelation again, where these numbers come from, 144,000, I think it's in chapter 7, verse 4, signifies a group of people who are sealed or protected by God. So it seems to indicate a number, either symbolically or actual, of people who are sealed or protected by God, or the chosen ones. So it's often interpreted as a symbolic representation of God's faithful followers in times to come, or also as a literal number of believers who will be saved. So there's two versions you can interpret from this. I have to explain that these are not revelations from God. These are prophecies from people who you could say were psychics, mediums, people of that time. In those days, though, such people were considered to be spiritual. So Jesus never said anything like this. It wasn't mentioned by anybody of noble birth. So I'm interpreting these based upon the historic origin of it and what it signifies today. Yeah, it is stated that so in that verse it's stated that 144,000 individuals from the 12 tribes of Israel are sealed. So now we're narrowing it down to these particular people from the 12 tribes of Israel. Incidentally, the 12 tribes of Israel were spread all around the world, so almost everybody is included because of intermarriages and so on. Yeah. So in Revelation 4, this verse describes the 144,000 as redeemed from mankind, thus first fruits to God and to the Lamb, meaning the first ones to be saved at the Judgment Day. So it could be taken either as a literal number of individuals or as a symbolic number to indicate lots. That's really it. On that, I don't want to go too much more into it because it's not really a spiritual thing, more of a prophecy, philosophy thing.
That's it. Anyone
Is that
got any
it?
questions?
Yes, go ahead.
A question on meditation.
Yeah.
It's not much. Obviously, you've got your rules and your principles that you need to follow.
Yes.
Initiation. But there's no like rule or set standard for meditation, is there? Like if you look at some of the older books, they tell you to focus on the third eye or in between the eyebrows. Some say just to sit in the darkness, and you will automatically brought to that point. Some say you don't need to listen to the sound will automatically come. And a recent initiate friend of mine was also told that you don't need to focus on anything, just sit in the darkness and everything will just come to you. So why is there no set standard when it comes to meditation?
All those statements are true at the same time. Basically, okay, it depends on which perspective you're writing. So these various books that they're reading, and there's more than that actually. I thought you were going to say some other things, but you've only mentioned a few of them. Firstly, what we're trying to do with meditation. Meditation is the idea of withdrawing consciousness back to the eye center, to the source of our origin or projection into the physical world. So we call this the third eye. So therefore, if we can locate the third eye, the theoretical withdrawal should be quicker. However, if we can't locate the third eye and we just sit into the darkness somewhere in this head, they don't just say sit in the darkness, they say around in focusing somewhere in the center of the head, then automatically when the time comes you'll be pulled towards the third eye point, which is true as well. So the two ideas of one, placing your attention at the third eye by locating the third eye, but also by sitting in the darkness, focusing on doing the Simran and Dhyan if necessary, and automatically you'll be pulled to the eyes, is also correct. At the same time, again, you're not in charge of when the sound comes, that's true. You can't generate the sound by your own will. When you reach a certain point of focus and attention, the sound comes by itself. So what is it you're doing? You're just placing yourself in that position. So whether you are able to focus on the eye center and can locate the center of your head through various means that have been described, or whether you're just sitting in the darkness roughly around that place and waiting for it to happen, reciting the Simran and doing Dhyan if you can, if you've seen a physical master, seen the face of the master, doing the Dhyan of that master, and waiting to see if you get pulled towards the eyes. And both are correct.
That's another thing that I've heard, that you don't need to focus on the master.
It's a great help, it's not a must.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
It's a great help.
And there's other books which obviously from Great Master's time which tell you to focus on the left hand side of your right eyebrow.
I wouldn't take those at all seriously. Translation problems from the original script, because you have to remember that Great Master spoke a variety of language, including Persian, and a lot of translations were done back in the 70s and so on, and there would be some discrepancies as to the translation meaning of that. Basically what Great Master is trying to explain is that the left side of your head. So let's say we take the head as the seat of consciousness, in which the center is your focus of attention, and we have a left and a right side. Because if you think about the Shabad, or the creative power, has to come into creation and leave creation in a cycle. Everything works in cycles. That's why we have the Dharma wheel of Buddhism and the chakra wheel of Hinduism and so on, because everything goes round. So let's assume that everything goes round the merry-go-round, and that's how the whole creation is managed. And the time it takes for certain things to occur determines how long the spans are in each phase of this creation. Okay, let's put that to one side. This idea is imitated in a human being as well, because after all, the entire creation is within us. So when the masters talk about the left side, not to focus on the left side, but to focus on the right side, the idea behind that was that the descending Shabad, or the Shabad that's descending down into creation to bring about and empower the creation, right, is taking us downwards and outwards. Whereas the right side is going upwards and higher. So they say listen to the sound on the right and ignore the sound on the left. This was mentioned only a couple of times in the Sant books. But because the moment you quantify something or give an expression, the Satsangis run away with it. They made much more emphasis of this than is due. The simple explanation was to try and explain the cyclic effect of even the Shabad within the body, how it generates power for you to function out into the world, project your attention outwards, and how it can also be used to withdraw you back, depending on left and right.
So it's the same sound?
It's the same sound. Now the actual real point here is to keep the attention in the center. Don't worry about left and right. Okay?
What's the flow of the sound, isn't it?
Yeah, you just concentrate on the center. Because once you come to the center, then the particular current that we're interested in, called the big bell sound, appears in the center. It does not come in the left or right. The practice sounds, or the translated sounds that go through the various medium as one is going up and one is going down, are on the left and right. Why bother with them? They're not perfect, and they don't pull you. But the sound in the center pulls. So masters say, well, if you focus, in one of the books it mentioned, and I'll only mention this because it's mentioned in the book and people have asked about this, that on the right hand side, that current, since it's going upwards, focus on the right hand side and it'll direct it to the center. Yes, that's true. But why not just stay in the center in the first place? Because the moment you start moving from left to right, you're immediately becoming spatially aware and you're losing the focus of attention. You cannot shift your focus of attention and remain focused, correct? I cannot move my binoculars from one position to another and remain in perfect focus. There's a time when you lose the focus and you have to refocus. So, why not stay in the center, keep the focus focused in one point, and whatever you're due to see or hear will come there, in the center.
So the bhajan part is not necessary? So the listening to the sound part is not necessary? The actual...
No, the sound is the important part of the meditation, the Simran isn't.
So can't you just stick with the Simran?
You can do, and eventually the sound will still come. But when the sound comes, in order to focus upon the sound requires a little slightly different orientation of the way your focusing mechanism works, which is why in Sant they give you what they call a bhajan position. Now the bhajan position is a different way of sitting to listen to the sound, because that way immerses you more fully in the sound and gives you the greater benefit. Not that it cannot be done by sitting on a chair or somewhere else. You can do it in any position. The only reason was that, especially back in the day, people were much more flexible and so on. And they said, well, when the sound comes, switch to the bhajan position and you can really focus on the sound much more, which is absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely true. It's like, for example, if I'm listening to music in a room and I want to hear all the fine details of the orchestral piece, and I'm listening to normal speakers, I would get the general gist of it. But if I put headphones on, I can really hear the details and enjoy it even more. Yeah, so that's the difference. But is one better than the other? It just depends on how you feel about it. But I would say that because of the effect the Shabad has on you, the rapturing effect, you would want to hear more of it. You would want to concentrate more. So you'd want to then adopt a position that allows you to listen more to the sound in a more focused way. And because it's the sound, not the seeing, that's going to take you home. The sound comes from your own soul. It's actually your own soul transmitting to you, and that's why it can pull you back. It's not external to you. It's not separate from you. Nothing separate from you can pull you. There'll always be doubt, questions. Why? Where is this thing coming from? The only thing that can pull you back within is from your own self. That can be fully trusted. It's a remarkable design, actually. But then when you look at your true self and you see how it connects with the Master and how it connects with the Lord, then you see actually they're all one and the same.
So it's not possible for like someone like Babaji to write a book and say, look, sit this way. Because
Babaji never wrote any books to start with. He hasn't written any books. Yeah. Before that, Hazur wrote some books, but you have to understand most of the books were written on behalf of the Masters. And books are an approximation of the truth and not the actual truth. There's never a case when any master has said, take the book literally.
Okay.
That this is a literal interpretation. They all say, no, this is not. This is just a guideline, a general idea. Yeah, don't take it too seriously.
Also in Babaji,
Speak to practitioners who've actually attained the state and ask them. Such a one will be able to tell you exactly what happens and what happened for them. Yeah. So masters all say this is not, Sant is not about book knowledge. Books are there to convey to new people an idea of Sant, but they do not replace the practice. In fact, they are so at odds with the practice because they're so limited that Master says burn all the books, they're misleading. Babaji himself says that. Why? If the books were literal, the truth, then why would he say burn them? He would say surround them with garlands of flowers and gold and whatever. He doesn't. He says burn them. That's the little regard Babaji has for the books. Why? Not because they're nonsense, but because they are not the complete truth. They are a representation of the truth that cannot be taken literally. Okay? But I do understand in a modern world where anything that's in print is taken so seriously, because the way contracts work, that we have this thing about the written word being very much more serious than the spoken word, legal contracts and so on, and paperwork and terms and conditions that people follow by. That mentality lets us take these books, even some of the books, too seriously. I would say, okay, it's interesting, but go within and see for yourself. And then you yourself will discard the book saying, oh, that's an interesting take on it. It's not really truthful. So start off with thinking of all the books in Satmat as children's books, aimed at children. Start there. Yeah, do the practice, and then you'll understand that there is so much missing from them. That why bother even writing the book in the first place? The actual truth and their approximation to the truth is a wide gulf, very wide, and sometimes completely misleading. In fact, most of the older books were completely misleading because they talk about things. For example, the most famous book, Sarbhajan, written by Swamiji Maharaj, he actually wrote a book. In it, he had a description of Satgurus. Okay, now this is written in his Sarbhajan book, so it's considered to be the mother of all books in Sanskrit. Yeah, everything refers to Sarbhajan as the Holy Grail. But look at this account. It says that in Satgurus there's such wonderful spectacles. The trees are miles high, and they're adorned with diamonds, emeralds, and rubies. That's luster so great that you're fixated by them. Now that's interesting. Firstly, you have to give an understanding why that's written. Most of Swamiji's disciples were female of the time, women, and they were illiterate. The only thing they could understand was things like, if you want to describe to them something wonderful, you say diamonds, rubies, and emeralds, right? It was a complete metaphorical explanation of what it's like in such kind, the level of joy. So, because they didn't have words that described the joy, these people spoke simple language of the time, right? They didn't have even elaborate Hindi or Urdu, where you can really elaborate. These people weren't educated even high level. He had to use something really simple to explain the concept of the wonderment of Satgurus. So he explained it in that way. But it's not true. because the Satgurus itself is nothing there. There's no space, no time, no trees, nothing at all of any objects that you can recognize. It is perfect stillness. It is a state of consciousness of perfect stillness. It is not a place. Therefore, the entirety of any attempt to describe it in terms of space and place is futile. Yet Swamiji, the great Param Sant of Radhaswami, wrote this in his Sarvabhajan. And Sarvabhajan has been hailed as a great spiritual work by all satsangis around the world, of all denominations. Yet there are many inclusions in it that are just not true. But they're there to convey an idea. So we really can't take any of these spiritual books literally. I think the only one that I find value in, if you want to read a book, is The Voice of the Heart. It's a book of Shabads that the saints sang, and praises they wrote and poetry they wrote based upon their personal experiences. And it talks about their personal journey from, let's say, zero to hero, from ordinary individual to an enlightened one. And their personal encounters and their personal endeavors and their personal struggles, everything, are very real for them. And they wrote it down. Again, there's some translation issues because they're from different languages. But that is, let's say, the closer to Sampat you're going to get from a practitioner point of view. Right? Everything else, you know, it's a story. It's a good story. Even Kabir Sahib wrote the Anurag Sagar, which was considered a great book in its time. Even great masters used to say, if one hasn't read the Anurag Sagar, one does not understand the story of creation. Yet, the story of creation given in Anurag Sagar is not true. That's not actually how it happened. It's an approximation to the truth. Meaning that Kabir Sahib, in his wisdom, wrote for the time to use metaphors and descriptions to describe the process of creation, the position of Kali in all of this and so on, missing a lot of essential details, a lot of key details that really make sense of the creation process have been omitted. Not on purpose, but simply because there wasn't the time to write every single thing that happened. You know, we talk about vast points of time. But the general gist of Anurag Sagar, the ocean of love, is about the bond between master and disciple. Really, that's what it's all about. So let's say you have a story. It's a love story, yeah, like a movie. Okay, you have a movie in a cinema. You watch a movie, you know, about a love story between a girl and a boy. The individual content of the love story varies. Imagine an alien comes down and watches a particular movie of how this love blossomed. They think, right, everything on earth centers around this method of love. But there's 100 different love stories. Everyone's still blossoming in love. Imagine the alien, how confusing they would be. They say, which one is true? Which version leads to love? They all do. Yeah, but none of them are true. They all are a representation of love. They cannot be taken literally, that this is the method to find love. But we enjoy all the movies, the love movies, because they all have that feel-good fact and they all end in a happy prospect. So the Sant books are very much written like that. They have a happy ending, happy ever after ending, and that's what matters. And they all talk about that happy ever ending in a certain way that requires you to go within. There's a lot of commonalities between the books, which you can look at and say, okay, all of them agree on this, all of them agree. Where they don't all agree on, forget about it. Just stick to what they agree upon. And when you cross into the eye center anyway, and you see the spiritual truth of yourself, of the astral form, everything starts coming to you. You don't need books.
Yeah, so all the books don't agree upon how to meditate, do they? So you're saying...
I've just explained to you that the meditation they've described is roughly the same, but with slightly different flavours.
So what would you recommend, just to sit in the darkness?
I would say do whatever you feel comfortable with. When you have that yearning to sit, firstly, how do you sit? You shouldn't sit by force. You should sit because you want to. That's the first thing. Create that feeling of devotion by preparation that you want to sit. While you're sitting for, you're creating a personal connection between you and your beloved. That's why you're sitting. You're not sitting to save the world, save your mother from an operation. heal the cat or make the flowers grow better. No, you're sitting for a very specific reason, and that is to create a personal connection between you and divinity. And that connection between you and divinity can be done by introspection. So withdrawing the attention within oneself, connecting it to that beloved one, picturing them first by imagination in your mind, and and slowly repeating the holy words. Even when you repeat the mantra, you imagine their voice repeating it. Not even you are saying it. You imagine they're saying it to you, and you're listening. Because it's the first line of practice of the Shabad. The idea of the mantra serves two purposes. One, it keeps the mind from chattering away and distracting. But the second thing is, it's a practice for you to listen. The correct way to repeat the holy mantra is to recite it and to listen to it at the same time. When you practice this art, then you'll be able to hear the Shabad. That's the actual true meaning. Again, that's missing from a lot of the books. They don't explain the correct method of doing the Simran during meditation. Yeah, it's a very important point. And then even better is, once you're listening to this, then put the Master's voice, which you have heard, there. Replace your voice with the Master's voice, so there's the Master reciting the Shabad. Even better. Because then the dhyan comes. If you can do that, then the dhyan of the Master, the image of the Master, comes before you. And it's a much better experience. So these are all little tricks and tips in meditation that are missing from the books.
You say that you should have that reason to sit for meditation. Is it wrong to sit just to know the truth?
You need to have a pull. If you sit mechanistically or out of curiosity, you'll get what you put in. Just curiosity. You'll see curious things, like moving shapes and things. Curiosity will be satisfied. Truth won't. If you want to know the full truth, you have to be connected with a truth giver. You can't just sit for the truth itself. It's very, very difficult for somebody. Back in the day, the yogis did. The yogis were obsessed with the truth, so they didn't need a master as such. They were just focused on the truth. But what they did, they were renunciates. They gave up their worldly life. Remember what we said, no matter what the cost, they did it. Yeah, of course, somebody like that, who's single-minded focus of attention, even without a master, they're able to see higher truth, but then even only then, up to Brahman.
That's like Buddha, isn't it?
Yeah, that's all they could get to. And these are extraordinary individuals. The average individual wouldn't be able to do that. Certainly not in the modern day. So it's much easier to have a master and connect with him or her. Focus your attention on connecting with them and let them show you the truth. Don't you decide which truth you should be seeing. How do you know? It's just a word in the dictionary. What truth do you want to see first? Let the master decide what's good for you. Yeah. So it's easy to focus on an individual and let that individual show you what it wants. That's the best meditation. Okay? The meditation is building a connection. And if you're going to build a connection with somebody, you need to have feeling. You need to generate the feeling. Then sit. Otherwise, what are you sitting for? It's just a robot then. And you're going to get a robot result, which is blank.
But the soul knows why you're sitting there.
The soul, sorry?
The soul knows why you're sitting.
The soul knows. The soul doesn't care.
Doesn't care.
Sitting is for the mind, not the soul. The soul doesn't need sitting. The soul is a lover of the Lord. It's connected through love and devotion. And then meditation falls away. So for example, when you reach Parbrahm, who needs to meditate? What are you meditating for? The meditation has taken you to Parbrahm, to the region of the soul. Now it's only the soul, no mind and Maya. The soul is a natural lover of the Lord already. What does it need to sit in meditation for? It automatically is focused on its destination. Nobody has to convince it. Meditation is just for the mind. Okay? To get to the point of discreetly, and then you abandon it and replace it with love and devotion. You see? So even meditation itself is limited. But because we're operating here as individuals in mind and Maya, we have to use the law, the karmic law, the universal law that governs this creation. We have to work with the law to attain that state. Once we have crossed the law, we don't need to observe the law anymore. Yeah? So again, this is something else that's not mentioned in the books often. You know, where meditation takes you. But Babaji has said himself, from Babaji from Bias, And even Ishwarji has said that meditation only takes you up to the top of the second realm, not further. So therefore, but if you look at all the books, for example, they say meditation is the be-all and end-all of everything. Because the people who wrote the books were at that stage. Yeah. So, again, take information from books or something just as speculative, but focus yourself on the highest truth and the giver of that truth, the master if you've been initiated, and everything will be revealed to you. You don't have to worry, it's not in your hands. That's true, it's not in your hands when you see the sound, what you see, what you don't see. And don't care about that either. Let's say you become a true lover of the Lord in this lifetime, just by the familiarity and association with Him, and you feel that strong pull. Who cares if you see anything or not, or hear anything or not? The fact that you're able to focus on your lover and enjoy the blissful connection with your lover is enough. Then automatically that lover will show you everything. Because this lover is benevolent and powerful. Yeah? Alright? Yes, so if we don't have any more questions now, I think we'll stop for a much needed lunch. So thank you all for coming. Hope you found it useful and look forward to seeing you all next time.
So dehi paje har ki sev pajo gobind pul mat ja मानस जानम का एही ला